Violent video game tax is getting closer to reality. So I went ahead and read the headline for this, and I got a little bit worried at first that this was going to be something that's going to be happening here in the States and that it was going to be something that we had to worry about. Now, after going over some of the information, seeing the article and everything like that, it does seem that this is actually going to be something that's happening in Mexico. And the fact that that's the case is a little bit ironic considering that, Mexico has had a really bad issue in the past couple of years when it comes down to the violence and everything that's been going on over there as far as like the cartels and everything like that goes. And now I know that there's some people out there that will probably downplay it and make it seem like, oh, like it's not that bad. It's not as bad as they seem. It's a lot of just, talk and everything like that. But I actually know some people from Mexico and know some people who have lived in Mexico. And it seems like it actually is pretty bad out there when it comes down to like the cartels and all that type of stuff. So the fact that Mexico and their government is trying to make a tax on violence in video games is just a little bit ironic considering that, that they have so much bad things that happen out there, so much heinous, like brutal homicides and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's really their choice. If that's what they want to do, then yeah, I guess more to them. Then I guess, but yeah, we'll go ahead and get into this article, and then per usual, I'll just get my thoughts as we go along. So Mexico has moved a step closer to taxing violent video games after the Chamber of Deputies approved one such levy as part of the broader fiscal package. The legislative proposal now heads to the Senate, raising the possibility of higher prices and increased regulatory scrutiny in one of Latin America's biggest gaming markets. And yeah, I feel like that's just kind of weird that they would kind of go in that direction. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously the cartels are different than the government itself, but from my understanding, it does seem like there is a lot of individuals in the Mexican government that are pretty much run by the cartels. Like they're pretty much dirty politicians and stuff like that that kind of work with the cartel members. So the fact that this is something that's been going on and it's kind of them that are deciding to go through with this, just a little bit weird in that aspect. So a 2025 report by Human Rights Watch states that Mexico continues to experience extremely high rates of homicide and other violent crimes. The trend peaked in 2022 when six Mexican cities recorded homicide rates exceeding 100 per 100,000 residents. Nationally, the homicide rate has declined slightly in the recent years and currently stands at around 25 per 100,000. However, an increase in reported disappearances during the same period suggests that the true rate of homicides may not have changed significantly, if at all. Much of the country's violence has been linked to drug cartels, which have proven difficult for the government to crack down on over the years. So, there you go. They've been having so many issues where the homicide rates exceed 100 per 100,000 residents, which is insane when you think about it. And they tried changing that stats to 25 per 100,000, but at the same time there was a lot of people that were disappearing. And I've heard stories like that too, where cartel members will come in and they'll either kidnap people or people will just kind of go disappearing and you just never kind of hear from them again because of the fact that either they were involved with the cartel or they did something that got the cartel's attention that made them pretty much a target at that point, which is horrible to think about. But yeah, the fact that it's been such an issue is wild because I remember hearing stats back in the day where it was stating that there was more homicides in Mexico than there was, I think, in Iraq, and that was even like during the war. So just the fact that it's such a big issue out there is just wild. It's crazy to think about. So Mexico's Chamber of Deputies approved 8% tax on violent video games. While the video game industry's connection to real life violence is much more dubious, it makes for an easier legislative target. It has now found itself in the crosshairs of the Mexican parliament, whose lower houses, the Chamber of Deputies, voted to approve an 8% levy on violent video games on October 17th. The measure was bundled into Mexico's 2026 economic package proposal presented as part of the health taxes, which also include higher levies on sugary drinks, tobacco, and gambling. And I don't know. I think that's really ignorant to kind of lump violent video games in with sugary drinks, tobacco, and gambling. Sugary drinks and tobacco, obviously, those are different aspects of it because those are actual things that can like harm your body in a physical sense. Gambling and I guess violent video games would be something that I would consider more of a mental kind of a thing. But even then, I don't think it's the same thing as, violent video games are the same thing as gambling. In a sense, you probably have to lump video games as a whole if you wanted to kind of go that route, but even then, I don't think it's as bad as gambling when it comes down to the way that it affects people. And also the fact that they're trying to go for violent video games is such a ignorant rhetoric because that's been something that they've been kind of shouting at since like the 90s when it came down to like Mortal Kombat having, the ESRB rating created because of the fact that it was violent. And so many different politicians here in the States that try making the claim that violence in video games is what's been causing a lot of issues as far as like school shootings and stuff like that. Not really looking at the fact that, big pharma and everything like that has, in my opinion, been one of the major causes of that type of stuff because of the fact that, you put these kids on these medications and stuff like that, and they have these weird side effects a lot of the times that end up messing with them mentally. So the fact that they're trying to blame video games for this isn't anything new. We've been hearing it here in the States for a long time, but the fact that they're trying to tax it in Mexico because they feel like it's an issue, I feel like it's just it's a very ignorant as like mindset to have when it comes down to that type of stuff, and an ignorant way to look at it, in my opinion. So, Mexico's new tax proposal also targeting other types of video games. The proposal can more accurately be described as a mature video game tax, as it doesn't just target violent titles but any with the C 18 plus and D adults only rating defined by the Mexican system of equivalence of video games content classification. The first draft of the law was originally introduced on September 14th with a budget presentation from the Treasury Department claiming recent studies have found a relationship between the use of violent video games and higher levels of aggression among adolescents, as well as negative social and psychological effects such as isolation and anxiety. No concrete studies were cited in the presentation. And that's one of the annoying things right there, is that that has been an issue in the States as well, where politicians and stuff like that have tried to make the claim that, like, oh, there's been studies shown that violence in video games, it will cause violence in real life. And when you look at some of those studies, and they've actually done other studies as well, that people have shown that it actually tends to have the opposite effect. People that partake in violent video games and stuff like that tend to be less aggressive and less likely to actually cause violence in the real world, because it's believed that when you partake in violent video games and stuff like that, it's almost like a stress reliever, and it gives more of a reason for the people to not want to partake in that type of stuff in real life. So obviously they're using that as a measure to try to cause this tax in Mexico, but at the same time, like it states right here in the article, there's no concrete studies that were cited in the presentation. So it's just hearsay at that point, which is just bullshit in my opinion. I think it's very stupid that they're trying to go that route with it, and I'm not a fan of it. And then on top of that, the way that they're saying that it's different types of video games are going to get taxed, that's where it starts. That's why there's a lot of people here in the States, they don't like whenever there's any regulations that are done by the government, because you give them an inch and they're going to take a mile. So it'll start off as just, oh, it's just violent video games because we're trying to look out for individuals and children out there, just make sure that they're kept safe when it comes to this type of stuff. Yeah, that's it sounds good in context, you know what I mean? Like it seems like it's okay, but it's like the saying goes, like all roads to hell are paved with good intentions. And they start taxing violent video games at first, but then it's going to go into other types of video games. Oh, well, then we're going to tax this type of video game or that type of video game because, it's these are the reasons behind it. They'll come up with some reason, whether it's, it makes sense or not. They're going to come up with it, and it's going to be something that's going to be an issue for the consumer. And that's the messed up thing with this type of thing, is that it's going to be more of an issue for the citizens of Mexico. They're the ones that are going to have to deal with this type of stuff, and they're the ones that are going to have to suffer. The Mexicans out there that are gamers, because at the end of the day, I'm sure there's going to be some developers or video game creators that, they're going to make a game that's considered a violent video game and it's going to get taxed, and they're going to think to themselves like, well, that's fine. I won't release it in Mexico. Everywhere else it can be released, everywhere else can play it, but Mexico is just not going to be one of those places, which is really messed up, because again, at the end of the day, that means that the individuals are going to have to suffer from that like playing video games, which is just, in my opinion, that's wrong. So what's next for Mexico's 2026 economic package proposal? The proposal now heads to the Senate, where it is expected to be discussed in the coming weeks. The Congress of the Union has a November 15th headline for deciding whether to enact the legislation. The current draft isn't clear on whether the levy would apply to both physical and digital sales, and where it stands on things like subscriptions, DLC, and other types of microtransaction. Should the general proposal be accepted, the Senate's version of the law is likely to clarify those questions. The violent video game tax would be stacked on top of Mexico's existing VAT, which has been sitting at 16% since 2010. The Treasury Department said the reasoning behind the measure was to raise resources for helping people suffering from negative social and psychological effects that it blames on video games. And that's bullshit right there. It's just, I feel like it's just another way for them to kind of get more money in their pockets, so they're kind of going wherever they can. And I'm sure a lot of them are seeing the way that video games are becoming such a high medium in entertainment that, it's so lucrative as far as the money that it brings in, that they want a piece of that money. I feel like that's probably what it boils down to at the end of the day. They're more than likely, they probably have studies out there as well where they know that violent video games isn't the cause of violence in real life and social isolation, as they had put it. But there is, at the end of the day, they want to do what they can to kind of get that money in their pocket as well. So putting in an 8% tax on that is just going to be another way for them to get some of the piece of the pie, pretty much, which is very disgusting in my opinion, and I don't agree with it whatsoever, especially because if it goes through, who's to say that they won't do something like that in here in the States or in Canada? I mean, I feel like it probably wouldn't be something here in the States, and if it would happen, I feel like it wouldn't be anytime soon. But if you look at other places here in North America, with Canada and stuff like that, I feel like there is a possibility it could have a domino effect where other places start trying to participate in this type of thing as well, which I don't agree with, and I do not like. I don't like where this is headed, hearing this information. But who knows? Only time will tell as far as where this is going to lead to and where this is going to go. But I'm not a fan. I don't like this, and I'm not too happy to hear this type of information. And I really hope this isn't something that comes to the States. So yeah. So those are my thoughts on that. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Do you guys think it's okay that they're taxing this type of stuff for video games? And do you guys think that if this is something that actually does pass with Mexico's government and it goes through, that there will be other places that look at it and kind of see the direction it moves in, and if they try to follow suit, especially with how much money, again, the video game industry brings in, if they're going to see how much money Mexico is making from taxing violent video games, if they're going to try to participate in it and get a little piece of that pie as well. So you guys can let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments. If you guys could like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you guys have been watching this long, I really appreciate it. It means a lot. And yeah, until next time, Harmonic out. Peace.